Okay. Well, another type of self-direction. Um, you've been talking about big things like performing or lifting weights, but I think it would be also very interesting to explore something a little more minimalist.
Hmm.
Now, are you sitting at a desk right now?
Kitchen table.
Kitchen table. And are there any objects on that table?
Yes, I've got
What
my
have you got?
notebook. I've got my
Okay.
phone. I've got a coffee cup.
Coffee cup. Let's explore the
Well,
coffee
it's
cup.
tea. It's tea. I've already
Tea,
had three
tea'll
coffees today.
work.
That's enough.
Right. So,
Okay.
so
Oh, also a cat.
in front of you on the table
Okay.
is a cup of tea
Mhm.
that at some point you could pick up and drink. Okay.
Okay.
But what I'd like to have you explore is like the pre-picking up um, phase of that. So there it is. We can all see it. I can see it. You can see it. And if you're sitting there and you think to yourself, or you could even just imagine that you're getting ready to do what's needed to put a hand on the cup. We're not even talking about lifting it or drinking, but just there you are, there's the cup, and now you add this thought that you're giving some thought to picking it up. And when you do that, do you notice anything happening inside you?
Yeah, the hand, my dominant hand is like gets a little warm and ready. Like, are we doing this? It's almost like I can feel like a heaviness, even though my arms are resting in my lap.
Mm-hmm.
Just thinking about picking up that cup, my forearms and my whole arm and my shoulder is going to go to work. So it's feeling a little antsy and ready.
Right. But you're not picking up the cup, but you're
Hmm.
still making a little effort.
Yeah, that's true.
So let's explore this a little.
Okay.
Um, how about if instead of thinking I'm about to pick, I'm thinking about picking up the cup, you could have that thought, but before that thought, how about a direction that you would like to use? You don't even need to say what it is. And that direction is going to inform what happens when you think about picking it up.
Okay.
And did that seem any different?
Yes. I didn't feel this like readiness shoot through my arm and hands, like already feeling the weight of the cup basically the first time. But now I'm thinking I'm not doing anything.
Hmm.
And I'm looking at the cup knowing I'm going to pick it up, but thinking I'm not doing anything. There is like that readiness is not there. The
Well,
eagerness,
I think the readiness is there, but
like that, the physical, like my arm felt warmer the first time, like almost my muscles were pre-engaged,
well, they were,
and they are not this time.
or they might be, but in a different way or less so. That's a possibility. Uh,
Yes, I my arm doesn't even literally feel as heavy.
right. Now, you just think about it for a second. Why would you want to have your arm feel and probably be a little heavy just because you're giving some thought to picking up an object.
Hmm. I suppose you're like your body is trying to prepare itself for what it might take to do the job.
It could be, but your body doesn't really know what it's going to take in terms of effort until it actually begins the process of reaching out to the cup and
Hmm.
lifting it. But this is exactly the situation that Alexander was in. I think we talked about this a little last time, where he's on stage in front of a large audience, no PA system, doing
Hmm.
Shakespearean recitals. And he didn't know, it took him a while to get to the point where he could notice this, but he noticed that the patterns of tension that were harming his speaking, he had this problem. He was losing his voice when he went to recite.
Right, right. Hmm.
He realized that that pattern of tension that he had identified using mirrors to see himself from different vantage points. It was pre-camcorder days. We're talking late
Right.
century. That pattern kicked in, maybe not in its full-blown version, but definitely the pattern kicked in before the first sound came out of his mouth.
You taught me that the first day.
Did I? Yeah.
But you
Well,
didn't, I
because
didn't understand it the first day, but
yeah,
you did something huge for me that day when you said, I don't want you to say your name. I just want you to think about saying your name.
yeah.
And the thought of saying my name was like,
All kinds of stuff kicked
yeah,
in.
yeah,
And on the other hand, let's say coming back to the cup, as you're sitting there and you
yeah.
see the cup and you think to yourself, I wouldn't mind having a sip of tea. So instead of just going with that, maybe preempt anything untoward by using a direction. Maybe I'm not doing anything, or I'm not doing, or I'm not
Mhm.
thinking. Doesn't whatever direction kind of jumps out at you as what might be a fun one to play with. So you're using that direction as you imagine picking up the cup. Think about it. You see the cup, and then continue that direction. Not every second, but just continue letting it be there as you actually put your hand on the cup. And
You want
just,
me to do it?
well, with the direction, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Don't lift it off the table yet. That's way too big a project. But you've got for the moment. So now you've got your hand around the handle. That's a big step. What did you
Thank you.
notice about what went on inside you to do that?
Um, I had to slow myself down just a little bit to give myself the time to think about the direction
Hmm.
before I lifted my arm, which is something normally very, very challenging for me to slow down anything. So I love practicing slowing down. Second, my arm was lighter.
Okay. And now, again, using a direction, I'm now going to have my hands on the cup in the place they need to be should I decide to actually drink some tea.
Okay.
Again, come back to that direction and take that direction with, yeah, perfect. And you can take it right into drinking a sip of tea. And you could take it right into putting the cup back down on the table and your hands wherever they want to be. Now, what was it like to drink that sip of tea?
Again, it slows me down
Mhm.
and everything's a little lighter.
Now,
That's my biggest notices.
I think that you don't necessarily have to slow it down, or at least not very much. I think if you, let's say we do the whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
where you are going to, in a moment, put your hand there, pick it up, bring it up to your lips, drink it, put it down. But throughout that entire process, in the background, may come and go, is this thought, is a direction, and see if it can happen at a what would seem to you like a regular activity
The
without
normal
being
pace.
super
Okay.
careful about it.
Okay.
Yeah, just go ahead and do that. Mhm. So, how was that?
Better because it felt a little more natural. I
Yeah,
feel like when I'm
you were being careful. And,
I was being
as a
careful.
first experiment, when you're first experimenting with something, maybe it would be a good idea to be a little
Well,
careful. But but careful is a tricky word because it can mean kind of like I've got to micromanage the
oh
movement.
yeah. I kind
And
of
as we know from previous lessons,
uh-huh
it's
that we
not
don't do that.
you who's, at least not your conscious brain, that you want to assign the job of micromanaging anything, but certainly not picking up a cup of hot water for
Right.
so
Well, I think a lot of this for me, it's kind of like at school when we have to learn a piece of music. When it's new, we take it what we call tempo de lerno. Like we got to
tempo di
learn this
learno. Yeah, that's
tempo de
good.
lerno.
Yeah.
Like this
Well,
is not
it
performance
is the
tempo.
same. It is exactly the
So
same.
yeah, it's like I just taking it slow helps me be intentional with the thinking because thinking for me, like I have like kind of like a ping pong mind often. And so I can be doing something and then ping pong, think about something else, just bouncing around. Like I'm not necessarily diagnosed ADHD, but I feel like I fit a lot of the categories, a lot of those symptoms. And so for me to just intentionally take it tempo de lerno and and take it slow and think about that, then I can get a little faster, and then get myself where I can do things at my normal speed, but remember to do the directions.
Right. I mean, as a first few explorations,
Mm-hmm.
it might be a little mannered, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But that the goal is to get rid of any kind of mannerism, any
Mm-hmm.
kind of carefulness in the sense. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to drop the cup and spill the tea. You want to be careful not to do that. But there was a
Mm-hmm.
certain kind of, I think when we first did some work with walking, the first couple of times I said, just go for a walk. It looked a little careful what you were doing. Like
Mm-hmm.
maybe a little wanting to make sure I don't make a mistake, kind of careful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's very common. But bear in mind that that's a transitional thing. That's a
Mm.
learning part of the learning process, is to do away with that, because
Yeah.
that's not really how you want to live your life.
No, another example of that would be in the first two or three videos of us Zooming. I found myself off and on thinking, am I sitting right? Am I sitting tall enough? Am I slouching? We hadn't talked a lot about sitting yet. And
Mm,
like, the more I learned, the more I could just sit using my directions and not have to think about, am I sitting right? It's very interesting. I was trying to like do it right the first two or three Zoom sessions. So
right.
now I giggle thinking back, like, I don't do that now. Now in these sessions, I don't have that same desire to like do it right.
Good, because do it right.
Uh-huh.
That's on the list that I
Hmm.
gave you, right? The X-rated
Hmm.
words. Yeah, do it right. Um, and the truth is that you have no idea what right is in a
Hmm.
particular new situation. Picking up the cup is different every time you do it. Depends a little on how you feel, how eager you are to have some tea. Or you think, is there something else going on that you have to attend to? So it's never gonna be the same movement.
Yeah.
It's never going to be. Now, your cat, who I don't see today,
Oh,
uh,
he's around. He's been
he,
sitting on every side of the camera, just
right.
not in front for some.
Well,
Oh, he's
your
around.
your cat
Don't wait for him. There he is.
definitely, your cat is sitting there very still, but ready to do whatever's needed, right? He's not pre-planning his next move,
But he's ready.
but he's in a state of quiet readiness.
I love it.
And, if cats were people, that there would be no need to have Alexander lessons, I suppose, if you think about it. Anyway, so that's an interesting little exercise to do in various situations. We talked about thinking, I'm going to say my name.
Yeah.
And we've done that. And now we've taken this really ordinary activity, uh, picking up a cup. But you could apply anytime you felt like running that kind of experiment. For example,
Hmm.
I don't know, maybe you're going to vacuum something.
Hmm.
Well, what's involved? You have to go and get the vacuum cleaner out of a closet and plug it in, whatever. You could break that down just as an experiment and say, okay, well, I'm going to go over and open the door and get the vacuum cleaner, but I'm just going to
Hmm.
first just think about going over and opening the door and then open it and then think about get
Yeah.
using the vac. And you could do it for the whole thing or just some part of it. But most activities carry with them some habitual patterns. Uh,
Hmm.
va Vacuum cleaning certainly does. I've noticed for me, and I've occasionally actually worked with people vacuuming because there's a tendency to get into a certain kind of a state of now I'm going to push this thing forward without
Hmm.
actually having had the experience of seeing what happens when they do begin to push it. In other words, they don't they go right past that. Normally, for
Hmm.
example, with the cup, if you wanted tea, you just pick up the cup and drink it. But by adding using a direction, you don't even have to slow it down. Um, you're making it less likely for habits that are not necessary to just not show up,
Hmm.
and the same.
Yep.
So that's something you could do for any activity, and it's certainly, especially any activity where it seems to you that maybe I'm getting a little extra strain from this that I don't really
Hmm.
need.
Yes.
Uh,
I've noticed that in quite a few everyday things, like making breakfast or blow drying your hair. You know,
yeah.
like those simple everyday things, I'm noticing, wow, I put in way more than necessary to do
Right.
this.
Well, most people do. I
Yeah.
do it. I do. I have to
No, not you,
intervene.
Robert.
Yes. Oh, yes.
No,
Me
I don't
and
believe
I
it.
would say pretty much all Alexander teachers. I mean, we all have habits of movement. Alexander, by the way, was once asked this question. I don't know whether I mentioned this to you before. Someone asked him, Do you ever come to a point where you don't need to use directions anymore?
Mm.
And he said, yes, you may get to that point, but then he said, when you get to that point, you won't want to not use them.
Mm.
And I think what he was getting at, I mean, I don't know exactly what he was getting at because I have not reached that point. So I don't, but
Yeah.
I think what he was getting at is, okay, I've got really good use of myself. And so, most of the time I could get away with just doing stuff and not even bothering to use directions or think about any of that kind of stuff. But I am a little vulnerable, perhaps, to something that I don't have control over. Some emergency comes up. It might be better if I at least did a little self-directing as kind of like a
Yeah.
precautionary project. And one way I think about this, and I don't know how I this is because I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what did he mean. And I was thinking, well, supposing you're a wilderness guide in and you're taking people out into this wilderness for a day or two, and then you take them back, and this wilderness area really well, right? If it's available for you to have a GPS system, a little GPS monitor or a smartphone would probably do,
Hmm.
wouldn't it?
Hmm.
Well, maybe not a smartphone because you wouldn't get a signal, but you can get a battery operated GPS system. Wouldn't it make sense for you to bring that along just in case?
Hmm.
Maybe you lost your way a little bit, or maybe something happened to you and the people on the trip would have this way of knowing how to get out.
Hmm.
Wouldn't that be a good idea to
Yeah.
do that little extra thing that doesn't really take any time or effort?
Well, that makes me think we need like a cheat sheet. We need like a little Alexander Technique GPS that we can, paper size or half sheet size. I can laminate it and I can put it in places where I just know I am a lot. Like right now downstairs in my gym, I put a couple of my favorite um, directions on the whiteboard
Hmm.
so that I could just see it from,
Sure.
and helps me think about it. But I'm like, gosh, like I could make my own little cheat sheet, but I wonder if there's
Why not?
little
That sounds like
resources
a great
out there.
idea.
And then people could have that as something that, they can download and print off and then put in prominent places so that just in case, it's in my folder at work or it's on my desk or it's in my purse or it's in my car.
Hmm. Hmm.
I actually think I would really benefit from that.
Mm.
Maybe I should, if that doesn't exist, maybe I should make one.
You should make one. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Sometimes new students have a hard time just remembering what we've talked
Yes.
about, and they may go for days with not thinking any directions. And well, that's okay. It's not like they're not, they're just not getting as much as they could from it. And so
Hmm.
sometimes they find it really helpful just to put little stick-it notes, stick on
Hmm.
yours. So they'll have these little reminders during the day. And um, but of course it's important that they really internalize that there's no effort here.
Yeah.
It's not a thing to do, it's a thing to think, but very lightly.
Yeah.
And
Which is
that
a
for
good
some
constant
people is
reminder.
is that's a challenge for some
It's a
people.
challenge for me.
But doing this kind of you might seem to someone looking at it a kind of a convoluted way to get the tea in your mouth, is a nice little practice in really understanding that this work is all about process, not about what you're doing particularly. It happened to be tea, but it could
Mm,
just as easily have been a keyboard, you know,
mm-hmm.
or a notebook that you were gonna give some thought to writing in. It's what it doesn't matter what the particular activity is so much
Yeah.
um, as a way of exploring doing things at a very an, a place. Well, I'm thinking there's this place where thought and movement kind of come together. The thought's there, and there's a little bit of movement. The thought has virtually no oomph behind it. It's just a thought. That interface kind of sets the tone for what follows. How you manage that interface. And that's the
Yeah.
interface we were just exploring. You were just
Hmm.
thinking about putting your hands on the cup and just thinking about lifting. And that's a powerful place to visit sometimes. I mean, not you don't want to be spending your whole life doing that, but that interface is really where the thought becomes action.
Mm,
And if you're using a direction, an Alexander direction, as
yeah.
it happens, you kind of set the tone for whatever happens next. And then again, you can once again set the tone for what happens after that. And you could start learning to use a direction just for a whole sequence of steps. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, I think it does. And that's why I think like taking things slow at Tempo de Lerno is a good way for me to see the steps in the sequence
Sure.
and
Yeah.
to take a moment and let a direction in.
Well, when you're doing that, you're deliberately, you might say, simplifying or making it easier to do the thing you really want to do, which is the singing
Yeah.
music. But
Hmm.
it's a
Hmm.
way to just explore a little pre-full-fledged activity. And
Mm.
that's great. That's exactly. I mean, actors and singers do practice, you know,
Hmm.
and at the beginning they might make mistakes and they learn from it. Well, this is a kind of a practice. It's a different,
Hmm.
it's not about the details of what you're doing, but it's about your general state as you're doing
Mm.
those things.
Yes,
So
I
some
like that.
people have. I remember you earlier said you thought, oh, hey, this is another technique, um, which it kind of isn't in the way I think you meant, but
No.
some teachers have referred to it as a pre-technique. Uh, it sort of precedes any particular skill that you're going to engage and make
Yes.
sure that you can engage in as effective and less likely to be create strain or discomfort or
I
harm.
love that.
Um,
I thought of another example that I used this week, and it was when you said pre-technique.
mhm,
So last week you told me that ready, set, go versus
mm,
when you heard ready, steady, go. And
yeah,
when I was a 100 voice middle school choir that behind the curtain, the show was about to start, the crowd was slammed, and they were so excited, and the curtain was about to open, and they're about to perform. And I was like, all right, everybody, just kind of take a deep breath. And we took a deep breath, and I was like, now steady, just steady. And before, like, I would say, okay, stand tall. All right, everybody, stand tall.
yeah,
Shh,
yeah,
shh.
yeah,
And instead, I was like, now just breathe, Now steady, steady. And wow, did I love the difference.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
what I could see 100 of them going steady. Oh, steady,
yeah.
you know, instead of shh, stand tall.
Yep. That's the
Good.
British version of Ready, Set, Go
That
with
pre technique really set them up
free
great.
technique. Yeah.